Qualifier weekend in September is going to be timeless. So we are getting our first kind of big competitive tournament in timeless format. We've had the metagame challenge on MTG Arena this past weekend where we've got to try it out, but the qualifier weekend gives you your chance to win into the Arena Championship. So this weekend will be the qualifier play-in for Best of One Timeless. Following week will be Timeless Best of 3 into the qualifier weekend itself. So we're going to look at some decklist options you can take to this qualifier event. These are some of the highest win rate decks per untapped GG, things that folks have been playing that have been providing a high win rate. So if you want to use untapped, link is in the video description. I'll paste all these deck lists and kind of go from there. I want to preface, I love Best of One. It is the format, I play more Best of One than Best of 3 just because it's easier on mobile, stuff like that. It's quicker games, at least for me, for my life. Practicing for Timeless Best of One metagame challenge has been the most frustrating thing. Or not metagame challenge, the qualifier weekend has been the most frustrating sequence of events. The power level is all over the place. You're trying to compete against turn 1 or 2 combos while also trying to deal with energy decks. I think all in all, if you do have the cards and you're familiar with Best of 3, I'm personally going to do the Best of 3 qualifier instead of the Best of One. I just haven't been able to consistently win in this format, playing a lot of the top decks. If you're versed with some of these Best of One decks, if you enjoy the play style, if you're cool playing higher variants, I would say definitely give it a go. But usually I do the Best of One qualifier play-ins. This one I am doing Best of 3. So just want to put that out there in the open before. So looking at the metagame, we have Show and Tell at about 17%. There's a couple different variations of the Show and Tell deck. We have, we'll go over through some of the configuration changes that people have been trying out, as well as there's the Shift and Show decks, which are using the Eldrazi package, as well to kind of use Shifting Woodlands, Eldrazi, and have a Show and Tell package built in. There's Mardu Energy and Boros Energy making about 22-23% of the meta. Giganta Companion, Lurrus Companion will indicate those with L or J, just slightly different configurations in those. The 5-color Reanimators, 4-color Vampires are kind of the same deck in a way. They're Dark Ritual, Sorin, cheat into play, cheat into one of the big Vampires, they're Phoenix decks, stuff like that. Dimir Frogs have a couple different variations. This is something I've been trying myself as right now. And then Mardu Phoenix kind of in that same bucket. So that's where the distribution is. You're going to see a lot of Belcher as well, at least incidentally. I've been playing against a lot of Belcher. And speaking of Belcher, Belcher currently has one of the highest win rate at 77%. These are small sample sizes. The format, the ladder just reset as well. But these decks tend to just be super linear. They disregard what your opponent's doing, and they look to kind of combo kill. With the Belcher deck, how you're winning is through Goblin Charbelcher. None of the cards in your decks are technically lands since you're playing the dual-faced cards. So you have Leyline to protect you. You have ways into Belcher. You can channel into Belcher to just generate the mana. You could beseech the Mirror to find you combo pieces. Beseech the Mirror into Ironcrag Feet into Goblin Charbelcher. There's a couple different ways to go about that. Against things like energy decks, you have Culling Ritual, sweep their board, get enough mana potentially to Goblin Charbelcher that way there. So there's a lot of kind of ways to go about it. There is, I believe, a turn 1, but more consistently turn 2. Dark Ritual, with these kind of effects, like the mana ramp, can generate enough kind of fixed color mana to get you the combo going. You have Pact of Negation for protection. You can hardcast Belcher, pact their counterspell or whatever on the upkeep with the trigger on the stack. You can also just activate Belcher and win that way there. So this deck, again, a very linear, I'm doing my thing. If opponent interacts multiple times, they get me, but you have some fail safes between Force of Vigors, the Pact of Negations, ways to kind of get around it. You have incidental graveyard hate with Bogart Trawlers, things of that nature. Then go to Dimir Tempo Frog. So this is another version of the deck. This one, interesting. I don't think the Jace the Mind Sculptor is a playable card in this format. It just kind of goes into Bowmaster. I've been trying a Lurrus version of the deck. I think just playing Luris is better. I'm playing 2 Tamios in the place. I went with like a very kind of anti-meta version of the deck. So I have a couple spell pierces, a couple baubles. The one I'll show you my list. I've been playing it more on mobile. Yesterday I was testing out a bunch of the decks, but Surgical is reasonable in the format. Stifle can kind of blow up like either activated abilities, like you could fizzle a Belcher for a turn if needed. Fetch lands, I've been kind of stone raining people. The spell pierces have been reasonable. I went kind of like a little bit mid-rangey. So I haven't played much on PC. I've been winning more than I've been losing with this one, which is encouraging. But like I've been playing Vexing Bauble. There's enough ways to kind of shuffle away with like brainstorm effects. You can pitch what you don't need to Psychic Frog. So there's some value there. But I found just like heavy disruption elements, like the Thought Seizes, Surgical, Stifle, Spell Pierce, Bauble gives you enough counterplay. There is still elements of guessing games because a lot of these combo decks do not play a companion. So there's very little known information in terms of your mulligan, which makes it a little bit difficult. You can kind of hedge it a bit with the brainstorms, but you're still running a little bit of a risk. Treasure Cruise over Dig Through Time is a consideration as well. You could kind of play between those. Because I'm playing Tamiyo, I wanted another way to flip it outside of Brainstorm. But these are kind of ideas of like the Dimir Tempo decks. You're kind of using some threats, some disruption. This one's on Baleful Strix as well. But I've liked the play patterns of this. I'm going to try out a best of 3 version of this, like mid-range tempo. I've been enjoying it, but in best of 1, it's still kind of a bit of a guessing game. Like even the mana base here, Prismatic Vista over just more fetches, is a little bit of a budget concern, I think. So then we go show and tell. I want to show it this way here because there's a lot of different variations. The core of show and tell, you're going to have the Sultai variants, which are leveraging the show and tell package with either Atraxa or Omniscience. And then you Mastermind's acquisition for Approach the Second Sun when that way there. There's a number of these lists that have a non-deterministic loop. So once you get the Approach the Second Sun, you're relying on further card advantage to find you your second copy. I personally prefer just, especially in best of 1, where you're not using these other sideboard slots, to have the deterministic combo. So the deterministic combo version is same idea. You have the Mastermind's acquisition. This one's playing 2 in the main. You only need 1. Masterminds for the Mastermind's acquisition in the sideboard, then get the Bonds of Insight, and then Bonds of Insight gets you your 2 Masterminds back. It gets you the Approach the Second Sun. So I've been playing variants of that. The flex spots, I would say you have Dark Rituals, you have Veil of Summers. Some are playing Leyline to protect you. I found the Leylines quite awkward because if outside of the opener, it's always a dead card. You're not casting it. It was always cluttering up my hand. You try to brainstorm them away, but I've liked the Veils as just another protection effect. Playing 3 Born Upon the Winds, I was trying that out. I liked that as a way to kind of win through, like I had one game against a Shieldred where I had like 12 triggers on the stack. You could win through that. You could win through Bowmaster, which is nice. The other options, things like Thought Seizes, you could play Spell Pierces. So it's really about how you want to attack the metagame. Ways to dig for the combo, assemble the team, Demonic Tutor, stuff of that nature. I was playing 1 Fae of Wishes, 1 Masterminds, just to have 2 effects there. Some of the lists as well will have mana bases that are configured to have Shifting Woodlands in the mana base. So you have options like that. This one's a little bit more self-mill with Founding of the Third Path, Cash Grab, kind of mixed into there. Malevolent Rumbles, backdoor kind of Reanimate package, which is a little odd, but you'll see kind of variants like that. Some of these versions are like Mainboard and Crossing Grip. I don't really love the Tainted Indulgence in this one. It is leveraging off the Woodlands, but it plays you further into a Bowmaster, but you'll see like Leyline in this one. So there's a couple different variants. I'll paste this one here because it's a pretty tight list, and then I would just say up to your discretion if you want to play the deterministic loop or not. I prefer it. Just if you're going through the hassle, you're going to win. You resolve your show and tell, you get your combo piece, but then just not be able to find it is a little awkward. So the other list I want to show just right after this it's a best of 3 one for what. With the ladder resetting, there hasn't been many of these shift and show versions. It's been played a little bit more in best of 3, but this version here, it's leveraging the Woodlands package. So full Woodlands, full Ugin's Labyrinth with the Eldrazi. So it's a Simic list. So you have Null Drifters, you have Devourer of Destinies, Drowner in Truth, always thinks the pitch. So you can mill over with Malavin Rumble and Cash Grab. You have Founding of the Third Path that also mill you. Ugin's Binding can be cast for free out of the graveyard when you cast a big thing. So you have your Show and Tell package. You have your just big Eldrazi package. So you can kind of attack it two ways. One ring in this one. You sometimes might see Chalice of the Void in the main board, which is a reasonable card in the best of one format. Just kind of, I don't know if you need 3 copies of Fae. You can play some Chalices. You have Channels in here as well. So that's kind of another version of this list if you want to play a little bit alternative win con. It's not as all in on just the show and tell. You can just win with big Eldrazi. In grindier games, you can go one ring. You're less susceptible to surgical in that case, just kind of hitting your effects. We then go to Boros Energy. So this is a Giganta version, 69%. So Boros gives you access to Blood Moon. You can play it in the main. We see in a lot of these meta bases tend to be a little bit greedy. So it kind of works in that case. Against Belcher, it's good and bad. It turns all their things to mountains, but their lands come into play untapped. They have ways to filter through the mana, through the rocks. So not a be-all, end-all. Static Prison's kind of your main way against show and tell when they're showing to kind of go from there. You can play Swords to Plowshare in the main, Reg Events, reasonable in some numbers, Ocelote's Pride, Lightning Bolt in here. So Lightning Bolt's kind of the more proactive version, Swords to Plowshare is a more reactive version, depends on how aggressive you want to be. But you have your Amptraptors, Nicodles. Goblin Bombardment's probably something I would play in some numbers as well. Just super reasonable card, helps enable a Johnny. At the very, I would probably trim a Bolt and a Regavan for 2 Goblin Bombardments in that case there. We then go to Mardu Energy. So this list here, very similar kind of concept. This one's a Luris Companion. You have your Swords main. We do see the Goblin Bombardments here. Black gives you access to Cthulhian Nightmare. That lets you kind of loop creatures. Another sack outlet for the Ajani. Bowmasters in here, Bombardments. Most of the lists have shifted away from Sorin, instead playing Juggernaut Peddler. In best of one, it's also just kind of a Thoughtseize effect that you can play in the deck as well. But kind of very similar concepts. Low to the ground aggressive decks that don't have much interaction to combo, so you're usually just trying to outpace them in terms of speed, like trying to kill them that way there. So that's the version there. And we go to 5-color Reanimator, the deck that I think is single-handedly the most frustrating deck I've ever played on Arena. So the deck itself can have very explosive turns that can basically pseudo-win on turn 1. You can, through the combination of Dark Ritual, Sorin into play like Saint Elenda, Vein Ripper, which sometimes is enough to win. You can Dark Ritual into, so you can Strike It Rich, Dark Ritual, Buried Alive, get 3 Phoenix back turn 1. You can Dark Ritual, Troll, Reanimate. So there's a bunch of different lines in that case there on turn 1. I've tried this deck so many times, and I had multiple turn 1 big vampires into play, Source of Plowshare or whatever kind of answer gets you, they kind of overrun you. I had a game where I had 3 Phoenixes on turn 1 versus Energy. Pick them apart, Ocelote's Pride, Guide of Souls just outpaced the life gain. They won through that way. The deck plays only 13 lands, so there's a high degree of mulliganing that's required. You are mulliganing to ideally a turn 1, if not, a worst case, your failsafe's turn 2. The deck gets picked apart by disruption at times because you usually have to mulligan. If you play draw has a big thing, I think. Like if you Saint Elenda on 1, pretty strong. Saint Elenda subsequent turns can get hit by Spell Pierce, stuff of that nature. I don't know. It's a very high ceiling, low floor deck, I would say. Just there's so much variability. I know people are doing well with it. It's just never worked for me. It frustrates the hell out of me. Like it's 13 lines. I was drawing like 5-6 lines somehow. It was just like silly in that kind of context. I just think for the amount of hoops you go to just not necessarily win on turn 1 or like turn 2 for what you're putting into it isn't the best. Like Vein Ripper on its own can't really solo in most cases. You could kind of get outpaced. The energy deck has a lot of things to sack in terms of like fodder, so they can outpace even the life loss or life gain. And oftentimes, like Sorin, I found just you could cheat in the thing, but Sorin doesn't survive most of the turns. So that was just my thoughts on the deck. I know some people are playing it and enjoying it. And then lastly, just mono black scam, kind of the fairish deck. I think this deck probably does better in best of 3 in a similar capacity, but you have your scam package. Like Grief's gonna win games, Thoughtseize will win games. Just ways to kind of go from there. Instead of Necropotence, it's a Shieldred One Ring to try to get that lock there. You have reanimation effects for like Troll, Shieldred, Grief can be reanimated on turn 1. Not that after all you're like Griefs. Ritual Deathrite kind of goes hard at times, just eating away the graveyard, stuff like that. This deck's very much going to be, does your Disruption work in alignment to the combo decks? Do they have Leyline or not? So it's more of a fairish mid-range deck that's got just a lot of hand hate kind of mixed into it. So that is it. Really welcome your thoughts on this format. Like I said, I've been trying to pick up, I was playing pretty much every one of these decks yesterday. Just getting a feel for them, seeing if there's anything that stood out to me in terms of a leg up. Probably spent like 2-3 hours just on show and tell variants. Finally crafted them, and I left more frustrated than feeling good with the format. So I will be playing best of 3 for this event. In any case, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great one. Stay safe.